To talk all things BBC. A couple of big stories that kind of erupted last week, and they warrant further investigation, I think. Who better to talk to about the state broadcaster, and as I just said, all its lack of glory, than the campaign director for Defund the BBC, Rebecca Ryan. Hello, Rebecca.
Kevin.
Now, first up, this is a story that I broke last week, and it's about a 69-year-old pensioner. What I want to talk to you about generally is I think it's time we stopped the BBC prosecuting people at all for non-payment of TV licences. They've reluctantly, you know, it being the 21st century, sort of said, all right, OK, then we won't send anyone to jail anymore. Oh, thank you so much. But they are still prosecuting thousands and thousands and thousands of people every year, every week, every month, in magistrates' courts all over the land, for non-payment of their TV licences. Very often, in 75% of the cases, these are women, often women of a certain age, or older women. Because of this, when people knock on when the inspectors knock on the door, I'm sorry for those of you who this seems to be old-fashioned and sexist, but it is still a fact. Women are more likely to be in than men, and they take the rap. So 75% of the prosecutions for non-payment of TV licences are women, many of them older women, old women living on their own often, for whom the television is their only friend, their only comfort. One such character was not a woman, a man, 69 years old. He lived in Bradford in this modest terraced home. The inspectors bang on his door. Poor old boy is watching on ITV4 old reruns of Minder. Older viewers and listeners will remember Minder. So he's watching this old show, and they bang on the door. You haven't been, and what it is he hasn't kept. He was paying on the Never Never sort of monthly instalments, and he hadn't kept up his instalments. So they raided his house, and he was prosecuted. He was taken to court. Now his daughter got involved and got in touch with the court and said, well, look, my dad's got dementia. His mental capacity is declining fast, by the day almost. I've just got power of attorney. I've been through all of his bills. It's utter chaos. And I've been trying to pay as many of them as I can, but I've got to admit I missed the non-payment of the monthly instalment for his TV licence. Court, yeah, whatever. He's got dementia, right? So they prosecuted him anyway. What he was persuaded to do, or rather his daughter was persuaded to get him to do, was to plead guilty. So he could be. They were told, "Oh, plead guilty," and it would just be token, you know. Anyway, what he was fined was £50. He pleaded guilty. Wasn't actually fined, but he was charged £50 cost. And this is what struck me. He was also charged, ordered to pay an additional £26 victim's surcharge. So this poor old boy, you know, who lives on his own, he's got dementia, has to pay a victim's compensation fee to the state broadcaster, the biggest broadcaster in the world, this behemoth of a broadcasting company, the BBC, that receives from us, the long-suffering Brits, £3.8 billion once a year in licence fee money. 3.8 billion. An old pensioner with dementia is forced to pay the BBC £26 in compensation. It's victims' compensation. I think that is disgusting. I think the BBC should hang its head in shame. And this is a story that proves to me it's time this ended. No more prosecutions for the non-payment of the licence fee, which the BBC pursues in an unseemly, voracious way. It goes for people who don't pay their licences like a ton of bricks, like a bat out of hell, because it wants to send the message, you don't pay your TV licence and we will have you, you'll be in court. and they want to send that message because they are addicted to the TV licence fee payer. So the way they go about it, and certainly in cases like this poor old boy, is they terrify people into going into court and settling up. It's disgusting, and I think it's got to stop.
Absolutely. It's horrendous. You know, as you say, most of these prosecutions, and it's the second largest number of prosecutions after driving offences. You know, this is a huge amount of prosecutions that are happening, as you say, on a weekly basis. And it's just bullying. You know, it's these, as you say, it's people generally who are at home, typically women, 74% are women. And that's, as you say, because that's when the licence inspectors go around, and it's more likely to be women who answer the door. But also it's vulnerable people who, because they're more likely to be at home as well. You know, people with dementia, people with mental health issues, people with disabilities, they're going to be stuck at home, and they're going to more likely get a knock on the door from these bullies who are going to, you know, criminalise them. And it's outrageous that this poor guy's had to pay a victim surcharge, because actually we're the people that pay for the BBC, and in this situation we don't feel victimised. You know, why are we paying for the BBC to prosecute this old man, to criminalise him? And then, you know, we don't need the £26 back, you know, off him to, you know, further make him struggle to pay his bills and what have you. It's outrageous. And as you say, it's the only broadcaster that in the world that does prosecute people for non-payment. It's an outrage. And the way the BBC goes about this, with the bullying letters that they send out, they're so opaque about what you can and can't watch. I don't know if you've ever seen any of these letters, but they come in as sort of like a red letter reminder, as if you're going to...
Certainly not, Rebecca. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I pay my TV licence, thank you very much. Actually, well, you know, I used to be a TV critic for about 12 years. I mean, this is still the case. Like most people, I'm usually about 2 weeks late in paying for it. So I always used to have these sort of nightmares about one day they're going to get me, and I'm a TV critic for a national newspaper, and I'll be in court for not paying my licence fee. But I pay it in the end reluctantly. But sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah, but so these letters come through the door. They're sort of threatened straight away with £1,000 fine, and then in small letters, you know, if you don't pay your licence fee, if you need to do these, you know, the small print is really unclear. You know, they sort of say, you know, you can't watch Amazon Prime, you can't watch, you know, and there is a lot of Amazon Prime you can watch. It's only the live broadcast channels on Amazon Prime, and they don't want to spell it out. They don't want people to understand that there's so much on-demand content and catch-up content that you can watch. You can watch all of, you know, ITV Plus, that's ITV Hub, that is on-demand content, but it's only live broadcast TV, and they don't want to spell it out to people, so they confuse people and they bully them, and people think, oh, I just don't know, and I just don't want to be criminalised or have to pay £1,000, so I'm just going to keep paying it even though I hardly ever watch the thing, you know. And that's what's really abhorrent to people. They just had enough of this. This isn't, you know, a public service broadcaster should be behaving. But it just continues.
They act like sort of mafia dons, you know. Pay, otherwise you'll regret it. You better pay us now. I mean, that's the way they go about it. And you know, this is massive amounts of people. So every year, between 25,000 and 48,000 people are prosecuted for TV, what they call TV licence evasion. Very often, by the way, it's not evasion. It's old people who forget, who don't get around to it, and sometimes, sadly, people who just can't afford it, but they don't want to give up their telly. I think that more sympathy should be shown for people like that by our lovely Auntie Beeb. Auntie Beeb, your wicked Auntie Beeb. In 2022, 47,692 prosecutions. Listen to this. This is huge numbers. Think about this. 2024 went right down to 25,550. Last year, up until early 2025, these are the most recent figures, it was going up again to 31,000. So it's going up again. As I say, the BBC should not be able to prosecute people for whether or not they pay their TV licenses. They can't keep doing this. I mean, I think what is worse about it, I mean, if they nicked me, I would thoroughly deserve it and I'd pay my fine, I guess. But we know significant percentages of these people who get done are old ladies living on their own, people like our 69-year-old friend. He lived in Bradford, by the way, you know, with dementia. People living on their own, you know, aren't quite at the races, you know, they're not quite as mentally sharp as they used to be. Vulnerable people, in other words, and the BBC couldn't care less. You don't pay that licence fee, we don't care who you are or what your circumstances are, we're going to get you, and we're going to make sure we send the message to everybody, you pay your licence or you'll end up in court. It's actually bizarre that this goes on. I mean, it isn't the case anymore, but until about 3 years ago, I remember, this was a statistical fact. 1 in every 10 court cases in magistrates' courts, 1 in every 10% of all court cases in magistrates' court were for non-payment of the BBC TV licence. It's just ridiculous. It's bizarre. It's preposterous. It's got to stop.
Absolutely, it's outrageous. And as I said, the thing is that it's so people are confused about what they can and can't watch. And so they think, I'm not watching the BBC, so I'm just not going to pay it. And then you get someone turn up on the doorstep, and if they don't know, you know, legally what they're allowed to watch without it, then they can trip themselves up. And this is the issue, that people aren't going to push back. You know, you don't have to let somebody into your house, one of these inspectors. You can refuse. And that's probably more likely as well that women are being prosecuted, because women are less likely to say, you know, no, get lost kind of thing.
Well, yeah, as I say, you know, sexist fact, I suppose, but the fact of the matter is, you know, there are the sort of remnants of traditional British life from the 1950s and 1960s. The women are at home, the men go out to work, and that's why 74%, as you say, of all prosecutions for non-payment of TV licence fee are women, and they will nick whoever opens the door. And that's the problem. You know, again, underlining the fact that we are, as a nation, allowing something to prosper in our midst that is intensely unfair. It's against the British sense of fairness. It's intensely unjust, I think. You know, leave us alone. It's just television.
Absolutely, it's horrendous. And if they were, you know, 100% clear and just were upfront about it and didn't send these threatening letters, people might, you know, have a better chance of not being prosecuted. So it's not just the fact that, you know, the methodology of how they're sending around these investigators, but it's also the messaging, and they're being deliberately unclear. But the thing as well is that they used to pay for the TV license for pensioners, didn't they? And then that was got rid of when it went through Parliament, that they could get, you had to have a TV license for watching BBC iPlayer. And then at that point, the government said, you know, well, then you'll cover the costs of the licence fee for pensioners. And that was the deal that they had. And then the BBC reneged on it and said, we're not going to, because you've stopped us from putting the TV licence fee up, so we're going to stop giving it to pensioners. But they are putting the TV licence up, and they're still not letting pensioners, you know, watch it for free, which is an absolute outrage.
It really is. And our poor friend, the poor old boy with dementia in Bradford, I think he sort of his case tells the story. You know, BBC, you know, put the case, the BBC doesn't really provide programmes for older people. BBC has this sort of weird schizophrenia about it. You know, it's well known that its average viewer of the BBC is about sort of 45 or something. Very old average customer of the BBC. And yet it caters nearly all its programmes for the people it wants to watch the BBC, like the 25-year-olds, and most 25-year-olds couldn't even spell BBC. They don't even know what it is. These old men in grey suits at Broadcasting House. We've got to get the young audience. Got to get the young. They don't even know who they are. So they're catering their output for this young audience who aren't there, and the people who do want to watch the BBC, like our friend in Bradford, end up tuning into ITV4 to watch very old episodes of Minder. Do you see what I mean?
Exactly, it is. It's like a codependent, toxic relationship that the British public have got with the BBC, in that it's not providing, and it has to, by its royal charter that allows it to sort of tax us, which is essentially what the licence fee is. It is classed as a tax. That they have to represent all parts of the UK, but they don't. As you say, they fixate on the young audience because they're so determined to sort of try and capture the young whilst they still might develop a habit of paying for a TV license. But it's just not happening. And so you've got these people who are sort of in their 40s plus being forced to watch this extremely woke content that is ramming home these really just mind-numbing kind of woke storylines into absolutely everything, and everyone's just sitting there in pain watching
In pain, exactly right. What a strange organisation, but it is full of middle-aged to old men primarily, and women going around. So we've got to get the youth audience. When I used to do quite a lot of work for the BBC, I remember an executive who shall remain nameless saying to me, he said, do you think we need to get into podcasts, don't we? We should cover podcasts. And I knew, and I said, do you know what a podcast? This was some years ago. I said, do you know what a podcast is? And he went, no, not really, but I think we've got to get into them. That's the BBC for you. Old men trying to second-guess young people who couldn't care less about the BBC. They're all off watching YouTube and Netflix like the rest of us. Right.